In this video, we're going to go over some basic maintenance and troubleshooting on this Accufast XL stamp affixer and labeler machine. So first, I want to point out some of the most common replacement parts that we sell on the website, cleanmachinemailing.com. In the machine here, the feed wheels are a common part that needs to be replaced from time to time. And we also sell this bump roller that helps forward the material into the feed wheels. And in this part of the machine, these rollers tend to wear out, and they'll kind of start falling apart when they're wearing out. So we sell those as well, like this. And then these belts, they usually last a pretty long time, but if they get really smooth and you have your material kind of slipping around on the way out, we sell these belts as well. And sometimes people want some extras of these for your different label material or stamps or whatever. It's nice to have extra ones on hand, so we sell those on the website as well. And this is the take-up belt that goes inside of the labeling head. And when that belt, it's what drives this take-up spool that goes in here, and that belt, when it gets old, it'll get stiff or break and stop working. So we sell these as well. We have quite a few parts for this machine. So for troubleshooting, a lot of the times if you're having issues where it's not stamping or it's streaming stamps or labels or whatever you're putting on, it's because the sensors are either dirty, well, usually the sensors are dirty, so you would need to clean the sensors. And on this machine there's a media sensor that detects when the material is coming through, and there's a label sensor that detects when the stamp is ready. So the label sensor is in the front of this machine, in the front of the labeling head. So to get to it, to clean it, take this roller out and pull this door open. And the sensor that I'm talking about, well, the labeling sensor and the material media sensor, they each have an upper and a lower, so known as an emitter and a receiver. And they both have to be cleaned to work. So in here, the upper sensor for the label is in that hole, in this hole up here, and you can clean it just by blowing air up in there, up in this little hole. The bottom one, the receiver, is this very small little pinhole right there by my thumb, and so it's on the top of this bar here, inside this little pinhole. So you need to blow air on that. And So you would blow air on the top of this, and if that doesn't clean it well enough, you can use like a cotton swab, like a Q-tip, dipped in rubbing alcohol, and you can carefully wipe it with that. Do not scrape it or poke at it with anything more abrasive than that, because it can damage the sensor. So that's the upper and lower label sensors. So down here, right here is where the media sensor is. The media sensor has an upper and a lower as well. The upper is right behind this bracket, and the lower is down in that hole right there. It's down in that hole a couple inches below. So you can blow air in under this sensor here, is this white sensor, and you can blow air in underneath it to clean it. And there are more details on the website, on our website, if you want more details on how to clean that, because sometimes to clean it really well you'll end up needing to take this bar out so you can access that hole and blow air down there good and shine a flashlight in to see, and you can do a better job of cleaning the machine if you take these covers off. So we have more details on how to do that on the website, cleanmachinemailing.com. So I'm going to go through a few basic things that are actually covered in the user manual in the troubleshooting section. One of the issues that you might have if labels are being applied erratically, so that could be because this isn't in the run position. So make sure after you thread it, you always flip that back to run. Okay, the label chute might not be in the locked position. So this thing, when you shut it, it has to click in. You have to push it all the way in. So make sure of that. The press roll, that's this, the press roll, not in its slots. So make sure that this is in all the way where it clips in. Okay, and another thing to check is when your material is coming through, you need to take an envelope or whatever you're running and put one of them in here below these gray rollers. Run it through so it's under the gray rollers and on the belts, and there needs to be some pressure in there. It needs to be able to grip it. If you put it in there and you can still spin these rollers, then that means they're not helping it pass through consistently. They need to be pressing on it. Just a nice light amount of pressure, but enough to drive it through so these belts can push your material through. Because if your material is not pinched in there, it's not going to drive through. It'll drive through, but it'll slip. So you'll get inconsistent label placement. And then also, I have seen situations where sometimes this shaft isn't clipped in properly, so make sure that it's clipped in. Other times where people didn't have the labeling head on properly, so make sure that it's mounted in as it should be all the way down. And then also this press roller needs to be also the same as the gray rollers. It needs to be lightly touching your material as it goes through to press the stamp on, or the label, whatever you're running. So if it's not, then you'll need to use the knob on the back to adjust. When you turn that knob, it moves this whole table up and down. So you need to turn it for a thinner material, and it'll bring the table up against these rollers. And if your separation blocks are not where they should be, to where once you get these adjusted right for your material, then these aren't the right place to allow one piece through, then you might have to readjust these, which usually you don't have to do that. So I recommend you don't mess with that unless you find that you really do need it. But you can stick a 7mm socket through this hole and slide over and through that hole to access the nuts that hold these separators, these two separators. Then you can slide them up and down if necessary to get everything set the right height. But usually once that's calibrated, you never have to mess with it. You just use the knob on the back of the machine. Use this knob on the back of the machine to adjust your height for your different materials. So let's see, the next thing in the troubleshooting chart that I want to look at, sometimes people will have trouble just because there is no space between the male pieces. This media sensor needs to be able to tell when one piece has gone through and when the next one is coming. So if you have this knob on the back adjusted to where it's too low, and sometimes like you have too much separation here, then you'll get kind of double feeding, where one piece will be going through and then the next one will start feeding through before the first one is complete. So then there's no gap between the pieces. So the machine, this sensor does not see a gap or a big enough gap that it can detect. So it'll skip putting a stamp on because it thinks it's still the same piece coming through. So make sure always before you start stamping, put your material in and start feeding them through, and adjust this knob to where it feeds them consistently and doesn't feed doubles, just feeds consistently and smoothly. And then once you get that going, then you can start trying out the stamp position and that kind of stuff. Okay, so the next thing in the troubleshooting guide that we see sometimes is, sometimes it will give an error. It'll say position label on male piece or something like that, or something like that. But what that means is you've moved the label too far to the back. So if you're putting a stamp on your letter and you put the position so far back that it's right on the very edge, right on the very tail edge of the piece, and it's too close to the edge, there's a limit to how close this can get to the edge. So if you get that error that says position label on male piece, just move this button, move the label to the front more, and and then keep trying it until it works, and then you can inch it back. You can move it back just a little bit at a time until it gives the error again, and then just go this way a little bit, and then you know that you've reached the limits of how far back you can go. A few other things that we've seen are sometimes when using this assembly, sometimes people have it adjusted where it's too tight, where it makes it hard for it to pull. When you put like a new roll on, it's a big roll, so there's like even more pressure. It's putting a lot of pressure on the roll, and it makes it hard for the machine to pull it through. Or sometimes the roll might just be spooling way too much and there's not enough pressure, and and then you get too much slack. So adjust the tension. Sometimes for certain kinds of labels you don't even need to use this, but for stamps it's usually good to use it. But just have a light amount of pressure on it, not so much that it's hard to pull, and not so light that it just spools out all over. That can be adjusted by taking an Allen wrench and loosening this collar, but generally you want to adjust it while it's installed on the machine. So you would there's a little hole in the side frame here that the end of this spring goes in. But anyway, once that is mounted in there, then you can loosen the set screw and then tighten it down where you need it to add or remove pressure. Another thing we've seen is down here in the labeling head, there is kind of some plastic tape, kind of Teflon tape that's around the peel bar, and if that tape wears out and is gone or is cut through on the edge, it will cause your backing material to break. Not always, but generally it can do that. So if you're having your backing material, your backing paper break while you're stamping, then that's probably why. That could be why. So to get to that, you take these two knobs off and then you slide this over and like this. Pull it out this way. So here is where this Teflon tape goes. It's kind of a clear plastic tape. It sticks in here and it wraps around here onto the back of it, and it kind of makes it a little bit smoother on this peel bar, because this is right where the backing paper wraps around, and that's what causes the stamp or the label to peel off. So without this tape on here, it becomes it's a very sharp edge, and it will tend to rip a narrow backing material like the inch wide material that stamps are on. And then to put this back in, you just do it the same way we got it out. So those are the most common things that we've seen. We have also seen situations where there is a bad shaft or bearing or pulley down inside the machine, and usually you can hear, if there's something like that going on, you'll hear strange sounds, and that's a considerable amount of work to get to that stuff and replace those parts. But those will cause issues where the stamp placement won't be consistent or whatever, because as the material is going through, if the transport isn't moving smoothly or something's slipping, then these belts will be not moving at consistent speed, so your labels won't be put on in the same place every time. But usually when something like that is going on, you can hear it down in the machine, something making a weird noise. So just one more thing to cover here is if you are ever packing or shipping one of these machines, One thing that you should do, and they do something like this when they ship these from the factory, so you should do it too whenever transporting these in a method where they could get shock from being dropped or something. You should definitely turn this knob all the way to the thickest setting, and what that does is it lowers the deck all the way down. And then you should get some pieces of foam and stuff them in between here, between this bar and the deck. And we always do this when we ship these machines. And what that does is it keeps this part from bouncing up and down. And there's a lever in there that when you turn this knob, that lever raises this whole assembly up and down. And if this machine is dropped, it'll break that lever down inside the machine. So the way to keep that from happening is, like I said, lower this all the way down to the thickest setting, the lowest setting, and then stuff material in here, some foam pieces or something like that to hold it so it can't bounce up and down, and that'll save you some headache if you're ever shipping one of these. And one more thing, for lifting these machines, they say don't ever lift it across from diagonal corners, because you can flex the machine, you could potentially twist something, damage something. So always pick it up lifting opposite sides, or you can lift by these bars right here. You can lift it that way. So that's all for this video. We sell these machines refurbished on our website whenever we have them in stock. So visit us at cleanmachinemailing.com. We have lots of parts for these as well. So thanks for watching.